It's because I'm a delicate English rose, darling.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. My name is Sarah, and I'm here with my delicate English rose partner, Allie.
Hello, Sarah. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. We have a really fun episode, despite it being a very mediocre WSL weekend, I would say. In this episode, we will be talking WSL, but that'll be in the back half of the episode. First, we're going to get into a conversation we had with Jenna Tonelli. She covers Gotham FC and the NWSL for JSN Sporting News and Nets Republic here in the New York, New Jersey area. We had a great chat with her about women's soccer coverage as a whole. So let's get into it. Hi, Jenna. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's a little odd to say hi because we've already been talking for like 5 minutes. So basically how this conversation came about is we were both in Philly covering Carly Lloyd's quote unquote farewell game, which means it wasn't her last game, but it was her farewell game. And there were a lot of major media outlets at the game because it was a big deal for Carly Lloyd. And the next day you tweeted, I'm just going to read your tweet back to you because I think there's a perfect way to jump in the conversation. And I don't think Allie's actually seen the tweet. Last night, I met a really nice reporter from the New York Times who was there covering the game. He appeared shocked to learn that I cover the sport in my spare time and have a full-time day job. I don't think the rest of the media world understands that this is how the NWSL gets covered. So you did go on to say, like, of course, there are some larger outlets like The Athletic who do amplify the league, but it's really not enough. And I just love the tweet. It's a conversation that we've had a lot on the podcast, but kind of in short spurts as topics come up here and there that relate to it. So I'm really excited right now to just dive into the depths of it and talk about mainstream media coverage and how the sport is covered really from the US to the UK and across the world and why it's important. So first and foremost, let's talk about lack of coverage in the mainstream media overall. Why is that important for mainstream outlets to cover women's soccer all the time and not just on specific events?
Absolutely. And, it's, like I had said in that tweet, which for the context was October of 2021, like I said, we do have The Athletic, but it can't all just be on one outlet. I mean, they do amazing work and I'm so thankful that they've been growing their coverage, but it was interesting that, at that same match, there was a guy sitting next to me. I don't remember what outlet he was from, but he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know the players. He didn't know who was scoring the goals. At one point, everybody started cheering and he turned to me and he was like, "Oh, what's going on?" And everybody was like literally just doing the wave. But but that's kind of emblematic of the problem. And it's just kind of clear they're just not familiar with the league. And it's not really those reporters' fault because they get their assignment and they go and they cover it and they do their job. And that's great. But it's not having the understanding of the nuances and the day-to-day and the players that kind of create that disconnect so that when the larger outlets do show up and they do cover it, there's like a little bit of like, oh, okay, like you're here now. And, where are you on the random, away game? Like I remember there was a one Gotham away game where I was the only media member on the post-game Zoom, just me. And that stinks, that really stinks. And, as the three of us know, and your listeners, we're all super passionate about soccer and women's soccer, and to have the ability for people like us to cover it is amazing. And like, I think that's also something that kind of gets lost, is that for us to be able to have this opportunity is so great. But at the same time, it's hard. It's really hard to struggle when, I have my 9 to 5, then all of a sudden there's like breaking Gotham news. And I'm like, I'm in a meeting, I can't cover it. Or, there's a game on a Wednesday night in Red Bull Arena and I had to work late, so I can't make it out there. And then nobody writes a game recap, So it's tough. I mean, it's an absolute honor to get to do it, but it's also really, really tough.
Yeah. I mean, I know we feel the same way. Allie and I obviously both do this in our spare time. And, with all of the other podcasts who I'll call smaller outlets, whether they're podcasts or, social media or whatever, they do it in their spare time. They build a team in their spare time, and it's all for the love of the game for all of the fans. And I'll say another thing, like about mainstream media coverage overall, there's a need for more coverage and for us to talk about the game all the time, because that's what brings money in the fight for equal pay that the U.S. women's national team is talking about. When we're talking about the NWSL or even the FAWSL, but I think more specifically the NWSL, and the fact that they need to pay their players more. Well, what does that come from? That comes from money that gets brought in if you can market. And if you can market and you can get the word out, then there's no ceiling. But if mainstream outlets are only covering the game so much, it kind of puts a cap on how many fans you can bring in, and so how much money you can bring in. And so therefore it puts a kind of a cap on how much the game can even grow.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because if there's no coverage, people don't know that this exists. And if, like, okay, I have a Twitter presence, but it's only for a very small amount of dedicated fans who know what they're looking for. But if you're just a casual sports fan, a casual soccer fan who you might want to go to the game, and then you have a team with a small front office who can't do that much marketing or is struggling in their marketing, and you're not seeing the press coverage, even like a game day recap or like a score on a ticker on ESPN or something like that, then how do you know?
We were seeing, for example, with Gotham, the majority of my friends, like I live in New York, the majority of my friends, some of whom I played soccer with in college, didn't know that there was a team, a professional women's team here, until they did a rebrand and got a bigger presence. So it's literally as simple as that to get more fans involved. I can't even tell you how many people sent me that and were like, we should go to a game now. I'm like, I've been to a game. I've been covering the games. So it's really as simple as that. I want to switch to what you were touching on earlier, kind of first and foremost, when you mentioned that you were sitting there and this man who was sitting next to you didn't really know what was going on. And I will say, like you said, we know that's not their fault. They're on assignment from their job. So I'm not coming at any of them, but we've seen this a lot. And I'll give an example, and maybe Allie can even elaborate on it. I've seen a lot, even like in the WSL when I'm watching, commentators who are assigned specific games will be doing commentary and they will mispronounce Ellen White's name, Lucy Bronze's name, like the most prolific. Allie's face is just like so the most prolific players in the women's game in that country, they'll mispronounce. And that alone is a problem. So this year, there's been a shift that we actually haven't really seen yet in this country, in the US. We're starting to see it in the UK, where mainstream media is picking up more WSL games. So there's a brand new contract, and now they're on BBC, they're on Sky Sports a lot more. But I think that this has made it a little bit more imbalanced between the mainstream media and these smaller outlets that are covering. So Allie, what have you seen in that space so far in this like first year of the contract where mainstream outlets are covering it more?
Yeah, so we saw a bit of a change since the 2015 World Cup, because England obviously got third, and that was a huge deal because that's the first time we managed to medal since we won the thing in the men's team in 1966. So it's been that was a huge deal. And then it really picked up after the 2019 World Cup, because a lot more of our journalists could get over, because literally it's an hour to Paris from London. Like, it was super easy. The new Sky deal that Sarah alluded to has brought in the biggest sports media in the UK. Sky Sports own the monopoly on sport. They have dedicated channels to different sports. That's how much they cover sport in our country. You've got a football channel, rugby channel, cricket channel. It's that sort of massive thing. So it was a huge deal when they came over and looked into women's sport. But the coverage is still not great. We are seeing more mainstream media pick it up. I was at a game last night, and I was sitting next to TalkSport, who is one of the biggest radio stations in the UK, running the game. We had the BBC London was there. Like, we had big outlets. But at the same time, you watch any England women's game and you've got Jonathan Pierce on the comms, for a fact you're not going to get much content about the game. You're going to get him telling random stories about the area, about what he had for lunch, I remember him starting a feud with Hope Solo by calling her crazy, and she went after him on her Twitter because it wasn't very professional. And so, yes, the bigger outlets are picking it up, and we're starting to see more coverage, mainly in print media over here. So we're getting a lot more of the broadsheets picking it up. But at the same time, it's not very professional coverage, because it's still classed as a second citizen sport.
That's actually really interesting. So sorry to cut you off, Sarah, but it's just what Allie was saying just made me think how interconnected it really all is. It's not just about who's showing up at the games, but it's who's doing the broadcast. Like, NWSL got the Paramount Plus CBS deals, which is going well, but then sometimes you see even like the camera work on the broadcast, like all of this stuff is all interconnected, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I mean, the opportunity for investment and to make money, which at the end of the day is what, sports business is all about. It's there. I mean, look at the US women's national team. Look at all the money they bring in. Like, the opportunity is there. So it's growing, it's slow. There's a lot of missteps. I mean, I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Like, we're doing the best we can here. And like what all of us have said, like, it's not to like, talk badly about anybody who is out there trying to do their jobs, but it's just totally like a broader picture about all these little pieces that have to fall into place to get these leagues to the coverage, the broadcasting, like all of this high level that they deserve, because that's the product that these players are putting out on the field. They're putting out a professional, amazing product that's worth coverage.
Absolutely. And I'm the first to say I want mainstream coverage of this, and I want mainstream coverage of this all the time. And then, as actually Helen has brought up multiple times, and we've talked about a lot of times, there creates this kind of divide, if you will, or like a push and pull, because the question almost becomes, how can we make this transition into mainstream coverage, but still preserve the knowledge like we're talking about, and the in-depth coverage and the many different voices that come from all of these smaller outlets actually covering it, which is what's happening now.
So I have like two lines of thought on this, and I hope I can like explain them well. My first line is, when mainstream media grows the coverage, that should in theory create more jobs for women or men or whoever to come in and provide that coverage and actually get paid. Because right now, most of the people who cover the women's leagues do not get paid or get paid very little. So if they grow the coverage, hopefully that means they're creating jobs to go with that coverage. And then my other thing is exactly what you just said about the fact that there are these quote unquote smaller outlets, smaller voices who are really necessary. And, I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends and colleagues about the fact that, women's soccer media, at least in the NWSL, it's all I can really speak for, is really white, and there's not a lot of diverse voices in this space. And, I'm really lucky. I happen to know a couple of outlets, Shea Butter FC and Diaspora United, who do amazing work elevating the profiles of Black players in the league, but it's not enough. And there's only so much they can do, and it needs to be more. So as, the media grows, the onus can't just be on them to do that. And they're doing amazing work, but like that is something that is so important to grow in this space, is having more diverse voices and giving them the platform to tell those stories, because they often get swept under the rug. And it's like every time I talk about this, I think it's also systemic, it's also interconnected. And it's crazy. Like, this conversation is like just so much bigger than we could probably fit into this 30-minute
completely
segment.
And unfortunately not something that we can like solve for in this segment, but
no,
as with everything, it's good to bring light to it and share kind of what's going on. And the UK in some ways is like a step ahead of the NWSL in that they've become a little bit more mainstream, but they're also up against men's football, as opposed to in this country, it's a little bit of a different game.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up in, like, we talk about like bringing the bigger outlets and the main media. We have seen that. We have seen the main media taking it on for social media, which has been a huge thing, it being on their main website as a front page. And a lot of the time they don't distinguish, which I think is great. Like, you're looking for scores, you will just see Man United beat Reading. It doesn't necessarily distinguish. That has led to trolling, and I'm on about like some of the worst sexist abuse you will see. It's middle-aged men, let's be honest, that's who it really is. But it's like, even when they're like, oh, can you not put it on a separate channel? And they do. Literally, I was rewatching a goal on Twitter this morning, and
we know you were rewatching the West Ham goal. You don't.
I was rewatching the West Ham goal. But it's literally, the Twitter account is Sky Sports WSL. Like, you cannot mistake what this channel is for. And literally the amount of people that were like, oh, who cares? Like, what's this nonsense? Don't put it on my timeline. And it's like, it's so, like, it's specifically for the women's, like, we can't make it more specific for you. In terms of diversity, we are lucky in the UK in the fact that we give a lot of opportunities to ex-players. So we do get a lot more voices from more marginalised backgrounds. We've got Alex Scott, who's one of our greatest women's presenters. We've got Leanne Sanderson, Eni Aluko. Like, we do get that. But at the same time, if you're not an ex-player, you tend to be middle class, white, and university educated, because the only way you get a job in mainstream media is if you've got that degree.
But even to that point about the ex players, and actually this is something that I heard on the Shea Butter FC podcast that blew my mind, because I didn't even think of it before, which is there. And it was in a conversation about who like the next NWSL commissioner could be, and could it be a woman of color or a former black player or something like that. There's just not that many because of how excluded those players have been previously. So there's just less of them. So it's already putting them at a disadvantage to get into these types of positions where they're covering the sport or going into those leadership roles, even though they should be there, because they've historically been discriminated against in the sport. So it's like it's a problem in staffing the league. It's a promise in getting on teams. It's a problem in the media coverage. Like it, and that, and just to bring it back to like the media thing, like that is the risk that we run when we give, when the mainstream media starts to pick it up a little bit more. And that is something that, while I totally want to see more mainstream media coverage of it, but like Sarah said, like you don't want to lose like those important voices that are doing this like really hard work right now.
Absolutely. I think you need to lead with it. And I mean, like you said, to the point you just touched on, like it is all systemic. When you're saying that, these people have been discriminated against within the game, you, correct me if I'm wrong, are not just talking about at the professional level. What you're actually referring to is systemically fewer people of color, fewer marginalized people are actually getting into soccer because of all of the barriers to entry that exist.
Right. And financial barriers, everything. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that this really came to light for a lot of people in 2020 when it became very clear that, a lot of these Black athletes didn't have a safe place to talk about stories of discrimination, racism that they face on a daily basis their whole lives in the professional game or before. And then on top of that, there was a lot coming out about how a lot of commentators would describe, for example, a Black player as strong and powerful and not necessarily as smart and skillful. So I say this to say, for all of these reasons, like we're talking about, it is so important to lead with all of the diversity of voices. And that is what you get from all of these smaller outlets. So if we do get to transition into more mainstream media, my hope is that it can transition in such a way that the people and the diversity of people who have been covering it can actually be given those opportunities. And I think that we don't really see this. I'm going on a rant, I'm sorry, but we don't really get to see this a lot because we're seeing the growth of a sport, and it's easier to change something as we're creating it than it is to like go back and redo. It's hard to go back and redo how the NFL is being covered. It's hard to go back and redo how the EPL is being covered. But as we're creating it right now, I think that this is important to have this conversation and maybe bring it to light for everybody so that we can move forward the right way.
Absolutely. And what was kind of interesting, and Allie, this is kind of more to what you were talking about with like the men's versus women's football or soccer, is that, I've also, soccer in this country specifically in the US is still behind. And I've even had conversations with some colleagues who covered the MLS side of things. And it's kind of a similar thing over there. I mean, a lot of those guys are covering soccer for little to no pay in their spare time, working a 9 to 5. So it's a women's sports thing, but it's also a soccer thing in general in this country, which is really such a shame. I don't really have much else to say on it, except that I hope that soccer can keep growing in this country, because it's an amazing sport. It's so fun to watch. The opportunity is there. The ability to make money is there. And we have some of the top talent, at least on the women's side, in the world playing in our backyards every single day. So it's like, let's go, guys.
That's so true. I feel like we talk about sometimes how the US as a country, when it comes to women's soccer, is like ahead of the rest of the world in so many ways, simply because of the investment in the women's game. But when you look at that compared to the investment of the men's game around the world, you can't even compare. So that quite simply is not good enough. Just because we happen to be the best in the world, that doesn't mean that it's good enough. So
this reminds me of a story. I went when the women won the 2019 World Cup. I went to the ticker tape parade downtown in the city, and I got
drinking beers, handing some to Kelly O'Hara.
Well, I somehow got tickets to like the thing at City Hall, the little ceremony.
That's so fun.
I don't know how I got those, but it was awesome.
Were you chanting against Carlos? I have to know.
This story is about Carlos.
Here we go.
At one point, Carlos Cordero, then president of U.S. Soccer and running again for some reason, went up and was talking about how the U.S. has more investment in women's soccer than any other women's soccer program in the world. And someone next to me said, well, the bar is really low, so you shouldn't really brag about that. And I lost it. I was like, that's so true. I was cracking up, but it's true. The bar is low. So, okay, yeah, maybe you do invest the most of any other place in the world. I don't even know if that's true anymore, but the bar is so low.
Jenna, thank you so much for coming on. This is obviously an ongoing subject. And as the landscape continues to change, the conversation is going to continue to evolve. So we hope that you can come back on and keep talking to us. And everybody, please go follow Jenna on Twitter. Jenna, will you throw your handle out? And also, while we're at it, would you just repeat those 2 podcasts that you mentioned that are run by Black women in the soccer world, because we want to be able to highlight their voices too.
Yes, absolutely. So my handle is Jenna Tonelli, Tonelli on Instagram, Twitter. That's me everywhere. The 2 podcasts that I'm referencing are Shea Butter SC and Diaspora United. And they're both amazing. They do great work. They highlight players' stories that aren't being told. And they honestly just provide really good soccer coverage. And yeah, I hope that, everybody's going to get ready for the NWSL season, March 19th. The Challenge Cup starts. We don't have a full schedule yet, but hopefully soon.
Oh yeah, we're going to be covering it.
I better see you at those Gotham games.
You will. We will be covering it as media together. So everybody, this is not the last you hear from Jenna. Thanks again, Jenna, for coming on. And now we're going to go around the world. Over to España, Spain first. Barcelona has lost. Just kidding. No, they did not. They didn't play this past week. However, we saw many tight matches, including 3rd place Atletico Madrid narrowly beating 14th place Sporting Huelva. Atletico Madrid took the 3 points on a 95th minute penalty, or PK, in a game that featured 2 penalties and a red card.
She does that to annoy me, guys. Over to France. The Division 1 Arkema is back well and truly after a long holiday break. Only 3 games were played as Lyon sits at the top, still 3 points ahead of PSG. The fight for 3rd Champions League spot is hot and looks like it will come down to the 3 teams currently battling out: Paris FC, Fleury 91 and Montpellier.
Over to the Champions League, matches will resume on March 22nd, and every single matchup looks like it will be a battle. We love the competition level that we're seeing in these games. Literally anybody could win. Camp Nou has sold out for Barcelona women's first Champions League match at home as they take on Real Madrid in El Clasico. That's over 99,000 seats sold. Hell yes.
And then back to the league down under, the A-League, previously known as the W League. We are so excited that the Australian club football has kicked back off. This weekend saw 2 ties. Adelaide United and Melbourne City FC drew 2-2, while Sydney FC and Brisbane Roar drew 1-1. Melbourne Victory, not Melbourne City FC, sit at the top of the table with Macarthur and Western United right behind.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedemar scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Well, we're talking WSL, and I'm just going to come out and say it because we'll touch on all of these games, but we'll touch on all of them very, very briefly because, to be honest, there wasn't one that I found interesting enough to really dive into. It was a bit of a bore.
Yeah, so we're going to go cut through every game very briefly, and then we'll go to see why it's been so lackluster. Going to start with the Saturday games. Both the Manchester teams played. We're going to start with Manchester United versus Birmingham. It was a 5-0 win for Manchester United. Again, predictable
and disappointing. Frankly, that's what I would say. Birmingham City had a great game last week, and as somebody who really wants to see more competition, I really wanted to see some level of competition in this game, and they just got rolled over.
Yeah, and like we saw the Birmingham from before Christmas, like the game against Arsenal. Yeah. We said it on the podcast last week. It wasn't that Arsenal were bad, it was Birmingham were brilliant. This game, they were sloppy, it was lackluster defending. They went down 3-0 within a 6-minute window. Zellum got a goal in the 20th minute, and then Gorton got 2 goals on the 16th and the 18th minute, and they just gave up. And I know the excuses, they didn't have their first team goalie, they had a young, inexperienced goalie, but that shouldn't matter. You've got Louise Quinn in your backline, who, to be honest, was the only Birmingham player that bothered from what I could see, who was normally like captaining the team, and they just looked like they couldn't be bothered. Like 3-0 down, they were like, nah, there's no point, we've lost this, what's the fight?
Disappointing. And while United did look sharp, Birmingham City really didn't have a great game, so you really can't rest your laurels on just that game if you're a United fan.
Yeah, exactly. Like they had 15 shots, but Birmingham had 1. Like
exactly,
it wasn't a contest. 75% possession Man United, 25% Birmingham, and how much of that possession was going to the centre spot after they let in a goal, you know what I mean? It was, like you said, it was predictable.
Predictable, exactly. As I would say, it was Manchester City, Aston Villa.
Yep, absolutely. First off, I do want to give a shout out to the young keeper, Kira Keating. She's been brought in because City have lost another goalkeeper to injury. Taib took a knock at the Conti Cup game. I mean, for a youngster, she's done great. She's done 2 clean sheets in the 2 games that she's played. But again, you know, an early goal put Manchester City on the front foot. It was like 5 minutes in, Stanway scored. And then again, Villa let their head drop, a bit like Birmingham, didn't really put up much of a fight.
City's got their players back. They're starting to look like they're in fine form. What I will say about City is all of a sudden everybody's saying that they think that they're up for winning the league now. I don't actually think so. They've had a rough start. They've got their players back. Are they contending for a Champions League spot? Yes. But I think that that's the peak of it for them this season.
Is it bad that I kind of wanted them to carry on like flatlining?
It's not bad at all. Me too.
Because I was so sick of the injuries argument. Like
Same.
But at the same time, as I said, there was no outstanding player on either team.
No, absolutely not. Stanway had a couple goals, but nobody that truly stood out. I will say, if there was going to be one game that we were going to highlight, it would have been Leicester City versus Brighton, because Leicester City came out with a win. And
absolutely,
this one I enjoyed watching. I had a fun time watching it, only because Leicester City won. Was it great soccer? No, it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But I tell you what, it was one of the only interesting things about that game. Not only because Leicester won and we're all cheering them on a bit, you know, underdogs and stuff like that, is Leicester played Brighton at their own game. They got a goal and they sat back and they defended really well, and which is what Hope Powell does. And we're starting to see Brighton like slippery slope down, because they were like, at the beginning of the season, like first half, we were like, could they be contending for Champions League?
Right.
Could they be like in the top half? They're slowly climbing. They're now 9th because they've had like 6 or something back-to-back defeats.
Yeah, they've slid pretty far. They are a middle of the tables team who has slid to the bottom of the middle end. Do you really think that they will slide any further though?
I don't think they're going to be in a relegation battle. I do think they're safe for another season.
Agreed.
But I do think maybe teams are starting to figure out their system. Hope needs to change it up a bit more, take a look at what was going right and change it again, because it looks like teams go, all right, Brighton defend well, this is how we get past them, and it's working for other teams.
I mean, we'll come on to this after we talk about the final fixture of the weekend, but it's kind of the same story for Brighton year in and year out. Middle to bottom of the table, same types of tactics, and you know the story.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Hope Powell should go, because I think she's one of the best managers in the league, but at the same time, maybe she needs to re-examine what she's doing.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go for what I think is the most interesting game. Of course I would.
Well, I wonder why.
If
anybody who is out there listening and guessing, you guessed it, was Spurs West Ham. You were at this game, which actually, while we were texting during it, and while it was a very hard game to watch, I found myself multitasking while I was watching it. The ending was pretty outstanding.
Yes.
You were there in a media capacity, though, real quick. You got a press pass, but it was at Tottenham, right?
Yeah, it was. So, funny story how I got this pass. So, was going to go to the game anyway, regardless. As a fan, it's my team. But I'm not giving Tottenham my money. I am that much of a diehard West Ham fan. I am not giving Tottenham my money.
Allie, you don't want to support the WSL. If you give Tottenham your money, you're still supporting the WSL.
No, I was not giving Tottenham my money.
Hold on. Why won't you give them your money?
Because it's Tottenham. As a West Ham fan, I can't do it. I physically can't do it. As I say, right? So we played them 3 times at their ground. First game, I made Kate pay, and then I paid her back. Second game,
still giving them the money, but that's okay.
No, I gave Kate my money. What Kate does with her own money is up to her. I gave Kate my money.
That sounds like a great story you're telling yourself.
Second game was COVID, behind closed doors. We couldn't go anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Third game was this one. So I'm in a group chat with a bunch of people I know that write for media and are just football fans. And I sent them a message saying, would anybody buy my Tottenham ticket and I will pay you back because I'm not giving Tottenham my money.
Oh my God, this is... Keep going. And then we're really going to do a moment on why you think just putting somebody as the middleman makes it so that you're not giving them money, but keep going.
Because I'm not handing my money over to Tottenham.
Okay. It just makes you feel better. I won't push you any harder.
I've also done it for Chelsea. I want to give Chelsea my money. Anyway, so Stuart, lovely Stuart, shout out to him, sent me a message going, are you serious? Because I'll buy your ticket for you if you're serious. And I'm like, yes, I'm not giving Tottenham my money. So he then said to me, well, I'll see if I can get you in as press. And then you really won't have to give them your money. And then lo and behold, next day I get an email from a lovely lady at Tottenham telling me that I've got in as press.
That's absolutely hilarious, Allie.
So wait a minute. The moral of the story is I didn't have to pay to get in to see West Ham Tottenham because I'm a petty bitch. Is the honest answer.
I love that was the solution. So for anybody who's listening, just get a media pass.
Exactly.
It's obviously not that hard. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So we were texting during this game, and you very much were saying, don't make me talk about this game.
Yep.
And that was about when West Ham gave up a penalty. Frankly, deservedly so. That was a penalty.
I have no arguments.
Yep.
It's one of those things because I was having this conversation with some fans on the way back and via text and stuff like that. Sissoko's red. Did she deserve to get sent off? I'm like, yes, she did, for the fact that you were already on a yellow.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you think that was a soft yellow, because I did. The pundits did. Like,
I don't even think it was a yellow. If that's an isolated case, that's not even a yellow.
Yeah, it was a cumulative foul, I think.
Agreed.
Really, is what she got it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, but if you are already on that yellow, you behave yourself.
Agreed.
You behave yourself impeccably. And she didn't. She had a temper tantrum. She kicked the ball away, yelled at the ref. The ref went, off you go, I'm not having it.
Yep. And poor Gilly Flaherty really tried her best to calm the nerves of everybody on the team. But everybody in West Ham was clearly losing their minds and fuming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this game had 6 yellow cards, 4 of them for West Ham, 2 were for Tottenham. We had the 1 red card. We had countless free kicks. Like, poor Rhea Percival, who used to play for us, there's clearly no love lost because we had 4 free kicks in 5 minutes and she'd been the victim of 3 of them.
I really enjoyed seeing Lisa Evans get a little spicy. She usually, she's physical, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't usually really get into it. She was getting into it that game.
I think it also helps she played for Arsenal, and the Arsenal also hate Tottenham.
Yeah.
So basically everybody hates Tottenham.
That's true. That's true. Well, so most of these games, in my opinion, it was like same old. And I want to say this, but I also want to be careful because I don't want people to come at me and be like, oh, you're just trashing the WSL. That's not what I'm doing. I love the WSL, but the past couple of weekends, I have found it to be, frankly, boring. The games have been predictable. The styles of play have been predictable. There really hasn't been much exciting news. The most excitement we've got are teams that aren't supposed to beat other teams are narrowly squeaking out victories. And that happened once last weekend and once this weekend. And that can't be all of the excitement. Like, if this is a product that they're selling, that can't be it.
Yeah, no, I do. I think it can pick up. I don't think that's the end of it.
I agree.
But I do think the last couple of games have not been the best showcase. I don't know if it's because teams are sluggish from coming back from Christmas, if the other C word is, I don't know if we're blanket banning the bug that's going around has had a factor in the fact that I know teams have had games cancelled because of it, and they've had players infected and stuff like that. but it's not the product I want to represent my country.
Yeah. I do feel like this happens in the WSL season around this time when you're midway through and you've still got a lot of games to play. And frankly, I think it probably happens in the NWSL as well. It's just a different league, so you see kind of different results. But because we're talking about the WSL, I do think that this is a theme in the past few years, at least, in that it does drop off halfway through the season. People get tired. The tournaments that they've been playing on the side start to add up, and injuries start to add up. And just mentally, when you're talking about the mental game, it's easy at the beginning of the season. You're excited. It's easy at the end of the season because you're playing for something, be it to stay in the WSL or to get that Champions League spot or whatever. It's hard in the middle of the season. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you talk about the build-up of play. I think around this time of the year, you're halfway through a season, so you're knackered from the actual season. Mm-hmm. The Conti Cup will have finished its group stages and starting the knockout stages. And then the FA Cup, the round where the WSL and Championship teams coming in, starts this month. So, for example, a lot of the teams are playing on the 29th and the 30th of January will be the fourth round of the FA Cup, which is the first round they've come in. So we're getting a lot of fixture congestion. The top three teams are playing, I mean, now it's just Arsenal, but they had Champions League fixtures and things like that. So it is getting sluggish, but I don't think that it shouldn't affect the quality of the product at the same time. I get people are tired.
I agree,
and stuff like that.
But I do think I see it in the EPL as well. Like, it's not just the WSL. I think maybe it's just human nature. Yeah. And so obviously I will like stick with it, but I do think that that's maybe what's happening here. But I agree. I don't like it that that's what the product is right now. It's disappointing. I am usually excited to turn the games on Saturday and Sunday. And it's less so right now.
And it's like, I'll say that I'm most excited about the West Ham game because obviously I'm a West Ham fan, but that's a derby. That should be a game that a neutral is excited to turn on because they've got history. They've talked about like, you know, the proper like butting heads and stuff like that. There's history in the fact that some West Ham players have moved over to Tottenham, some Tottenham players have moved over to West Ham. Like, there is history in the women's game, never mind the men's like rivalry that filters in. Just in the women's game there's history. There should be more, like, as a neutral, you want to see that game. And frankly, the product that I saw, apart from, you can talk about the sending offs like we have, Kate Longhurst's goal was a wonder goal. Even you said that, like, what an absolute goal that was. But at the same time, 690 people turned up in person. How many do we think actually watched it on TV? Like, and that's a derby. That's like the pinnacle of excitement for a new.
As it should have been, and the game should have reflected that too. It did in intensity. Like, that was fun, but in level, I don't really think that it did.
No, not at all. It was just very. I can't even get my words out about how angry I am. Speaking of lackluster and boring and predictable, we're going to finish here, but head over to our Patreon because the FIFA Best 11 for the women's team has just come out, and boy, do we have opinions.
Oh, yeah. Preview, there's no Barca players and there's no Canadians, and we're going to go talk about it on Patreon. So head over.
From what I can see, nobody's happy about this. So yeah, head over to Patreon, hear our views on that.
It's more content, it's more opinions, it's all of the same good stuff you get here and more. Thanks everybody for listening. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
And this has been the Women's Soccer Show. Thanks everybody.